You know, someone yesterday was like, Vosh, are you going to cover the conclave? And I'm like, damn, dude, what's there to cover? You know what the conclave is, right? We're not watching them debate the issue. We're not, I mean, that would be cool if it was like a gigantic round table, you know, and all the cardinals are, you know, like arguing with each other. Rip Pope Francis, he was the most progressive pope of our lifetimes. Pope Francis was unambiguously the most progressive pope. Like, part of that is just the natural drift towards progressivism over time. But part of that is also, he was pretty good. And it's a very low bar. It is, but at the same time, I know that there's a lot of like reflexive discrediting that people engage in because the Catholic Church as an institution is like homophobic and stuff. He was pretty goated, man. Like, genuinely. He's the world's most popular spiritual leader, and he was like non-stop on that piousness grind. It was a low bar, but he cleared it by an enormous margin. Still not actually trans friendly. I mean, by the standards of the papacy, meeting with trans sex workers. Like, again, I know, but the cardinal spoke very highly of him today. Well, I imagine so. Keep in mind again that like a significant number of cardinals were elevated by him. So I think there's a decent chance we get who we want. Hagel is the guy that we're looking for. Is that correct? I believe that's his name.
One thing to understand is that all of that takes time. You know, we imagine in the conclave that there's all this charged political debate going on. No, inside the Sistine Chapel itself, virtually the entire time that the cardinals are inside is given over to the ritual of the balloting. Each ballot takes about an hour and a half, and with this extraordinary number of electors, it'll probably even take a little longer.
So they sit the whole time? They don't stand up and
most of them will tell, no, most of them will tell you that while that's going on, they're sitting reading their breviary. That's a book of prayers that clergy have, or praying a rosary, or doing, the one thing we know they're not doing is checking Instagram, because their devices have all been confiscated.
I believe the kids call it raw dogging it if you're going to go through a long period of time with no electronic device.
Yeah. Oh, right. Well, they're of a certain age, so they might be used to.
I just wanted to.
One thing to
Delightful. Crazy how much of Catholicism is literally just LARPing. LARPing doesn't mean anything anymore. They're praying because they believe in God. That's not LARPing. LARPing is American tradcath converts who converted because they felt ashamed of their lolicon addiction, who don't believe in papal infallibility because the Pope is woke. That's LARPing, okay? People who believe that Catholicism is when you crusades post. That's LARPing. These guys are cardinals. They're not LARPing. They probably believe in God. I'm just gonna guess. I mean, they're choosing the next voice of God on earth. An hour of prayer, honestly, is pretty modest, I think. Zuppi's more progressive than Tagle by a solid bit per my research. We don't know who's going to win. Somebody in chat earlier said they had 20,000 down on Tagle, so praying for them, I guess. Check the Polymarket. Actually, you know what? For once I will. Polymarket Conclave. So according to the almighty wisdom of the Polymarket, it looks like we've got 4 riders right now. At the top, we've got Pietro Parolin, and then below, Tagle, then Zuppi, and then Piazzabola down in 4th. Quite a volume, too. The anti-pope has been elected. Uh-oh, they're going to have to kill these kids. You cannot let these schisms prosper, or people will begin to doubt the Holy See. I'm sorry, kid, but you've given your life to defending this new anti-pope, and I'm afraid the odds are stacked against you. This is who they chose? God bless you, son, but you're not long for this earth. I don't feel good saying it, but heresy must be purged by flame. Yeah, it's just necessary for, like, stability, you know? Did you see apparently there was an organization handing electors a, quote, report on the cardinals before the conclave, trying to influence them to pick a conservative? What? Like they went up to the cardinals and were like, hey, have this pamphlet on why being woke is evil or something? I don't think that's going to work. They're cardinals. Yeah, I think they'd be offended by that, if anything. Maybe we'll see the Pope at TwitchCon this year. Not impossible. I forget Tagle would be good too, right? Yes, Tagle would be good. You got a horse in this race? Not Pietro Parolin? Cardinal tarnished by secret Chinese pact emerges as frontrunner for Pope. Frontrunner... Okay, frontrunner based on what? The Polymarket? Again, reminder, this is the conclave. They don't have polling data. Frontrunner based on what? At least they say it here. Favorite emerges to replace Francis as conclave starts. As the conclave to elect the new pope begins, Pietro Parolin has emerged as the betting favorite to succeed Pope Francis. Betting favorite, right. So it literally just like treating the Polymarket like it's polling. Why do people do that? You can still tell who has the most support based on internal politics prior to the conclave. Yeah, but like reporters aren't really privy to that information, not reliably. Also, like they are being honest here. They're just saying it's the poly market. I hate the poly market, dude. Isn't poly market normally more accurate than polling? No, not even remotely. Where on earth did you get that information from? It's literally just gambling. I mean, it's not informed on anything but what people think. They're just talking about the goddamn odds, man. They're just talking about the motherfucking odds on the poly market. It's insane. Jesus Christ. I do like his +3 magic staff. That's pretty cool. That shit's like water enchanted. Does that rod he has do anything cool? Like commands the sea, I guess? The Holy See. Shut the fuck up. In doctrine, Parolin maintains traditional dogmas regarding Zionism, same-sex marriage, and euthanasia, while retaining an openness in revising the disciplines that surround clerical celibacy. Okay. If we get MAGA Pope, will you finally believe we live in the Matrix? No. You're not getting me. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like, okay, I admit that I it's not like I follow the internal politics of the Catholic Church, but like Francis was beloved, you know? One of the news articles we just looked at had an opinion piece saying the next pope should heal the divides within the Catholic Church, which is conservative dogma. The idea being Francis was woke, so now we need to appeal to the conservatives. Progressives don't say that. But he was loved within the Catholic Church. How much division has there been really on account of Francis outside of the fact that he's beefed with there's the American cardinal, mostly like the arch conservatives. I know that there's been beef with America. How much does it matter if the Pope's conservative? How much power does the Pope really have? I mean, a huge amount as a spiritual leader, you know? If you like account for the fact that Francis presided over a bunch of appointments and a bunch of reform within the Catholic Church, you know, it's I think reasonable to say, I think, that the Pope has more power than a president in a lot of ways, you know? Not in as direct of a way, but in more of a like, are you setting into motion cultural forces that will sort of awash for a long time, that'll continue to affect people for a long time, as opposed to will everything else get undone in 4 years, you know? I don't know. Very, very important. Soft power is what you're trying to say, Lowell? Well, yeah, of course. But like soft power is usually, that term's usually used in contrast to hard power. Obviously, the Pope doesn't really have hard power. He's a spiritual leader. Francis actually did a massive amount to make Catholics in Latin America and Asia more progressive on social issues. He did a massive amount. A lot of people look to the Pope, you know? Papal infallibility. Can't the Pope call in a holy crusade? Yeah, well, we're probably a little while out from that one. It'd be fun if they tried, though. Beat back the Orthodox hordes in Ukraine. Met with J.D. Vance, along with Archbishop Paul Gallagher. Is this the, No, that's the British one. An exchange of opinions on the international situation, especially regarding countries affected by war, political tensions, and difficult humanitarian situations, with particular attention to migrants, refugees, and prisoners. In 2015, following the Irish citizens' approval of the referendum legalizing same-sex marriage, the Cardinal declared the outcome of the vote was a defeat for humanity, saying he was very saddened by what had happened. Concerning euthanasia, he condemned the decision to introduce it to legal systems. Blessing of homosexuals. Following the promulgation of Fiducia Supplicans and protests from traditionalist Catholics and some bishops, particularly in Africa, he refused to comment on the legality of the document, limiting himself to saying that there has always been change in the church is open and attentive to the signs of the times, but must be faithful to the gospel. He's definitely not an arch-conservative. By the standards of the papacy, this is definitely not what the conservatives want. This would probably be a moderate by their standards. He's not an arch-Zionist either. That's good. Oh, no Catholics. You're not going to find any. That's not a position you'd expect to see in a pope. That particular brand of like Christian Zionism is very much an evangelical thing. The Catholics don't really go for that. Yeah, no, unironically, he's better on Israel than most Democrats. Read about the fascist cardinals. I don't think there's much of possibility that they're going to they're not even listed on the poly market. Not to imply the poly market is the arbiter of truth or anything, but I don't think anyone's expecting an arch-conservative to be like a significant number of the people who are voting on the next pope are people appointed by Francis. I don't think that's likely to happen. Like of these four options, Parolin, the one we just looked at, is the most conservative. Tagliazzuppe and Pizzaballa are all more progressive. Pizzaballa, Jesus Christ. I'm not getting over that, man. Catholics don't like Jews, in my experience. It's complicated, but yeah, anti-Semitism is pretty baked into the Catholic Church. Things have definitely changed since Vatican II. Like, the dynamic is different. But it's also important to understand that for a lot of Catholics historically, especially outside of Europe, like if you're looking in like Latin America, the reading that Jews should be held responsible for the death of Christ was treated more as a historical consideration and less a justification for contemporary anti-Semitism. Obviously, the ruling is still bullshit, or was still bullshit, but like, there's a big difference between like a German Catholic who based his entire political ideology off that persecution complex and like a Mexican Catholic who's never met a Jew in his life and is like, yeah, I guess that happened, and then keeps on living in a multi-generational household or something. Does that make sense? But also, Vatican II happened like 70 years ago. Only people like American trad cath converts want to change that. In 2025, the Mexicans more likely to be Hitler. True, but then they'd be atheist. What's Vatican II? Vatican II is a ruling issued by the Catholic Church that, among other things, officially decreed that Jews were no longer to be held responsible for the death of Christ. Which is good, because it was bullshit anyway. Vatican II is also the time they said black people were whole, real people, from my memory. They did a lot of wacky things over at the Vatican II, you know? According to a lot of American Catholic converts, Vatican II is when the church went woke. And they say that it's because of post-World War II guilt. The church was based and red-pilled, but then because of the social pressure to be woke after World War II, they became woke. Ignoring the fact, of course, that the Pope didn't get along with Mussolini or Hitler during World War II either, like before Vatican II. But whatever, yeah. If Vatican II was so good, why isn't there been a Vatican III? Well, I mean, there will be eventually, right? Probably. Maybe the Vatican III will be like pro-trans or something. I don't know. They'll no longer hold trans people responsible for the death of Christ. In a March 2015 interview, Tagle said the Catholic Church needed to develop a new language for addressing gay people, unwed mothers, and divorced and remarried Catholics because, quote, what constituted in the past an acceptable way of showing mercy changes and needs to be reimagined. Tagle said, the harsh words that were used in the past to refer to gays and divorced and separated people, the unwed mothers, etc., in the past were quite severe. Many people who belonged to these groups were branded, and that led to their isolation from wider society. But we are glad to see and hear shifts in that. For the Catholic Church, there is pastoral approach to what happens in counseling, in the sacrament of reconciliation, where individual persons and individual cases are taken uniquely or individually so that a pastoral response could be given adequately to the person. In 2017, he led the Lazarus Project, a social media campaign for Easter which called for greater acceptance of people traditionally judged as sex workers, the homeless, and LGBTQ people in Catholic churches using the hashtag #ResurrectLove. Cute. Tagle would be a big deal if he gets accepted as well because he's very young. Isn't he like 65 or something? He has the potential to be the Pope for 20 or more years. How old is he? He's born 57, 50, 60 would be 17. Yeah, 68. That's the most progressive one. No, I think the other one is more progressive, but this he's one of the progressives. There are, of the 4 people who are being considered on the poly market, 3 of them are considered progressives, and one of them is Pietro Parolin, who's a moderate. Nobody considers any of the conservatives to be viable. He's advocated for the better treatment of migrants, denounced the preferential option for Christians in refugee resettlement programs, noting any policy prioritizing Christians generates animosity and biases between Muslims and Christians. Which one is this one? Tagle. He's got a sick-ass coat of arms. I think that's cool. I think more powerful people should have coats of arms. I think we need to bring this back. As far as I'm concerned, Catholicism is the only, like, real religion. Because when I think of a religion, I think of shit like this. I think of, like, ancient symbols, funny hats, and direct lineages that go back thousands of years. I don't know what the for one, Protestants literally don't count. Orthodox Christians kind of count, but you need a pope. Sorry. Buddhism? No. Are you kidding? Buddhism? Really? Come on. No. That's mysticism. Hinduism is real? Judaism got nothing, really? You know how many Jewish jokes there are about how rabbis don't believe in God? Sorry, man. The Catholics are the one, like, real religion. Islam, though? Are you just, like, mentioning every religion you know? Did you not hear the criteria? First, fix the schism. Just for, like, to play the numbers game. For 2, you need a new caliphate. Where's your caliph? Okay? Come on. And then that caliph needs a coat of arms. Anglicanism? Are you kidding me? Okay, you people are just saying shit now. Bro, you don't think Anglican? What about Lutheranism? What about shut the fuck up? Jesus Christ. These standards are very confusing, lol. Yeah, keep up. The problem with Islam is that every other guy wants to be caliph. Yeah, well, you know what? That's like the growing pains that you got to go through. I wouldn't say Catholicism is a real religion if you went back like 1,500 years. If the Roman Empire was still around, that'd be like Catholicism or Christianity? What the fuck is that? You think that's a real religion? That's just dudes being fed to lions. Their god is literally a loser. My god is like a frail carpenter who died like a bitch. Okay, my god is like Mars. My God is like a planet of war, and he could beat your God up. You know, that's how the Vikings were when they talked to the Christians, right? Like, that was unironically the dynamic. A lot of the Scandinavian pagans genuinely didn't understand, because the pagans were like, well, my God's like obviously stronger. Like, what are you, like, your God? Okay, so you're like proud of the fact that your guy sucks, basically. Vinland Saga reference. I wonder if Vinland Saga was referencing anything else itself, or if that was invented whole cloth from the author. Then they converted to Catholicism because priests said people who can't get into Valhalla can still go to heaven. I think what you mean is that the loser Scandinavians converted to Christianity. Dude, they were probably made fun of so hard by their contemporaries, because then if you converted, everyone would be like, oh, so you thought you weren't going to Valhalla. This guy's still 22, prime of his life, and he's given up on dying in honorable combat. Okay, buddy, sure, you could go to your bitch heaven if you want. I'll be drinking mead with the boys up in Valhalla when I'm done. They were crazy. You know what? Like, unironically, one of the only reasons the Vikings propagated was because of all the pillaging and raping and what have you. They were so self-destructive. They had like kamikaze ideology. There were literally reports of like fathers at 37 who were too old to go into combat normally. So they would charge their own sons in like a murderous rage to dare their sons into killing them. They would do like suicide by cop, but instead of cop, it was anyone, because they had to die in honorable combat. So yeah, no, for real, like, this happened. So they were like, well, I'm not going to war anymore. So the only ones around who could like bring me an honorable death would be my like kids, basically, who I trained. So I'm gonna charge them. Orcs. Unironically, that's orc shit. Incredible stuff right there. Crazy that like through ideology and mysticism, you can bring people to that place. Bush, you just making stuff up? I mean, I wasn't there 1,000 years ago, but like, no, that's legitimately what their religion was. They thought the only way to go to heaven was to die in honorable combat. That was literally their religion. Past the point, you gotta appreciate why the Christians ended up developing a more like long-lasting civilization, right? I mean, the Vikings weren't even like writing shit down. So no heaven and no women in heaven. Yeah, it was pretty gay. As it turns out, mercy, peace, and forgiveness are better long-term philosophies than war and conquest and death. I mean, you like it sounds like it's pseudoscientific, but there's actually some truth to that. I think there's a reason why the early pagan religions were much more focused on like warfare, sacrifice, and so on. And then the civilizations that ended up like developing the most enduring legacy, and to this day still exist, at least in like an ethno-linguistic or religious sense, are the ones that are more like, yeah, actually going to heaven is when you listen to your dad and do your chores. There's probably some truth to that, right? Sorry, we were talking about the Conclave type shit. Like the movie. I actually haven't seen it. I should probably watch it. They're doing some crazy IRL advertisement for it right now. Let's take a look at Zoopy. Great movie. I've heard that. They call Zoopy the street priest. My beats are fly. My rhymes are sick. Something keeps getting bigger. Yeah. You get me. Fill in the verse. My crew is big and it keeps getting bigger. That's right. I haven't heard it in a long time. He's got kind of that look to him, though. Like he could rap, the street priest? I don't know. In 2018, Zuppi contributed an essay to the Italian translation of James Martin's Building a Bridge, Un Ponte di Costruire? I know I'm that up. He wrote that it was useful to encourage dialogue as well as reciprocal knowledge and understanding in view of a new pastoral attitude that we must seek together with our LGBT brothers and sisters. Dude, the fact that of the 4 papal candidates people are taking seriously, 3 are progressives and 1 of them is a moderate is pretty incredible. Like, do you know what the last pope was like? I'm actually blanking on his name, but he sucked. Benedict, the one who looks evil. Yeah. He supports the 2018 Vatican-China agreement, which allows the Pope to approve and veto bishops approved by the Chinese Communist Party. The fact that any cardinal would not support this is insane to me. Like, authoritarian governments that have a Catholic population have always had an influence over like what bishops are accepted within their country. The idea that the Vatican wouldn't like officially approve bishops from China just because there's meddling from the government would be like ahistoric. Why China specifically? Condemnation of European nationalism, noting in March 2025 that, quote, only a united Europe can preserve European humanism. Today the evil of nationalism wears new clothes. Evil of nationalism. If only some of the Indians and Pakistanis who jumped in stream chat yesterday could be around to see this today, but I know that they're not because I haven't started talking about India and Pakistan yet. They're not European, so they get a pass. That's true. Met with Zelensky, facilitating the return of Ukrainian children illegally deported from Russia, as well as the release of prisoners. I guess Even though we've already pretty much looked at his deal, I guess we kind of have to look at Pizzaballa as well. The Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, named Pierbattista Pizzaballa, whose birthday is the day that Pope Francis died, and his motto is, "My grace is sufficient for you." He also has a coat of arms. Unbelievable. Why do they have Latin mottos? They are cardinals. They can do whatever they want. Wait, that's actually his name? I thought Vosh was riffing. I still think that, like, God is riffing a little bit. Isn't he the one who offered himself up as a hostage? Yes. After October 7th, he offered himself as a hostage to Hamas in exchange for the release of the hostages that they had captured. He's very progressive and also pretty based. He's not as progressive as Zuppi or Tagle, but he's probably got more aura and hype moments than them. Wouldn't his surname change if he became Pope? Well, it doesn't have to. He could be Pope Pizzaballa the First. Could use some new glasses, though. Or maybe not. Maybe this gives him that, like, old man aura. I don't know. Oh, yeah, Tagle can sing.
I'm sorry I cannot.
Pierniki I wódka. Też jestem bardzo...
I think he will.
Oh, this isn't him singing? Sorry, I know he could sing. You showed me him in front of a microphone. I assumed he was going to be singing. It's not like I can read this. What is he saying?
I'm sorry I cannot speak Polish. The only Polish words that I know are related to food. Kielbasa and perniki.
What about the third one?
Vodka.
Bardzo mi... Widzę, że wszyscy zrozumieli, a na wszelki wypadek przetłumaczę. Bardzo mi przykro, że nie mówię po polsku. Wszystkie słowa z języka polskiego, jakie znam, dotyczą jedzenia. Kiełbasa, pierniki I wódka.
And I am also quite humbled by the fact that the Archbishop will translate for me into good Polish.
Jestem bardzo tym zażenowany, że arcybiskup będzie tłumaczył mnie na dobry język polski. Cokolwiek to znaczy.
Since I do not know Polish, I think he will change my conference.
Ponieważ nie znam z polskiego, to myślę, że on będzie zmieniał moją konferencję.
He's cute. I don't know. It's cute. Nice to see a papal candidate acting like a person. Sometimes they're a little bit too, well, I guess for lack of a better term, holier than thou. How are we in this situation where there are politicians that are less forward-thinking than religious leaders? I mean, unironically, lobbying. Like, there are plenty of conservative cardinals and bishops and what have you, but, like, genuinely, that's the influence. It's the influence of capital, right? Really? Oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. The Catholic Church is, like every other institution, influenced by money, but, like, not as much, you know? Politicians live or die off their funding. Everything they do is steeped in those considerations. The Catholic Church is incredibly wealthy on its own, and it gets that money not by appealing to corporate lobbyists or whatever, but by virtue of it being the Catholic Church. So, because they're not as, again, I want to be clear, not as influenced, not influenced at all, not as influenced. I think that, like, sometimes you see instances of clarity here. Like, the fact that 3 of the 4 leading candidates here, possibly 4 of the 4, genuinely seem to have a better read, both internal and international politics, than the average career politician, despite being older and you'd think less educated on the issue, it's pretty impressive. It might also be the fact that the Catholic Church represents cultural power, and cultural power doesn't really exist in American politics, right? You have, like, you have social power, you have political power, but the Democrats and Republicans as institutions aren't themselves, like, culture, really. They get overwritten, like, by whatever is most convenient at the moment. They're like they're vessels for messaging, but they're not themselves, like, institutions. I mean, I could argue Trump's a cultural force. Trump is, but the Republicans aren't, and that's the difference, right? The Catholic Church is the Catholic Church because it's the Catholic Church. Whoever is elevated by the Catholic Church is given power because they're at the head of the Catholic Church. They have an institutional power. It elevates people within it. But no one really gives a shit, like, about a person just because they're the head of the Democrats or Republicans, you know? The average person probably doesn't even know who chairs the DNC or the RNC, right? They're just, like, political orgs. They're businesses. Now, We'll see how it goes. I wonder to what degree all this is just good PR for the church. The institution's still doing horrific shit. I mean, yeah, the Catholic Church absolutely does bad stuff, recommends bad stuff, covers for abusers, etc. It's not a secret, really. But it's not really a PR thing. The church doesn't need PR. It's the church, you know? Can a pope be impeached, so to speak? Maybe. I don't really know. I mean, papal infallibility, right? I don't really know. I mean, some crazy shit would have to happen for them, for anything like that to be something pretty wacky would have to happen. One pope tried another pope in court after he died. Yeah, I know, but I'm familiar with the wacky history.